Hello nerds and nerdettes, and welcome back to the channel where once again we have a new video for you guys. Today we will be going over and reviewing We Only Find Them When They're Dead, the deluxe edition by Boom Studios. This is a very interesting story that I've wanted to read for a very long time, and I'm super happy that I was finally able to read it. But before we jump into any of the details of the book, a quick reminder that if you are looking for this book or any of the other books that I do feature on my channel or review on my channel, you can use the channel sponsor organicpricebooks.com. You can use the code STAYNERDY for $2 off your order, or when ordering 4 or more books, you can use the code STAYNERDY, ship it together. It's a great way to save yourself some dollars as well as help support the channel. Every little bit counts, so thank you to all of you that do decide to use the channel's code at Organic Price Books. But let's go ahead and jump into the details of the book. So this is written by Al Ewing with art by Simone DeMeo. This does have a cover price of $50, $49.99, but we typically round up if it's $49.99. And a page count of 400 pages. It is a very beautiful book and a very interesting highbrow story, but we can go over that during the overhead shots like we always do. Here we are. We Only Find Them When They're Dead, which is a very long title. We need a nickname for this, guys. But this is by Al Ewing and art by Simone DeMeo. There's not a whole lot to show off as far as the look of the book, other than the front, back, cover, and the spine. There's no dust jacket, and this is from Boom Studios. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into the book itself. All right, let's get right into it. So we do have a beautiful star space-like end page sheet, I guess. And then we do have a title page here. We Only Find Them When They're Dead. And then we have the creators on the left and a little bit of a quote on the right. So make note that obviously Al Ewing is the writer on this particular title. Simone DeMeo is the artist. There is a color assistant, which is Marisara Miotti. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that poorly. And then it is lettered by And World Design. So obviously this is mainly a Al Ewing and Simone DeMeo product, and they are very symbiotic as creators. They work magnificently together. But let's go ahead and move forward into the book. So this is a quote by Simone DeMeo, or I guess, paying respect by Simone DeMeo, which is to his mother, which is obviously always beautiful. Rest in peace to her. And then we can move forward to chapter 1, 8 bells, all's wells, which get used to hearing that because that does appear multiple times during this particular title. So we do open up with a young boy and his family in a space convoy of such, and they are traveling throughout space when the little boy sees something for the very first time. Make note that a lot of times throughout this book it will tell you the year. So this year is 2323. The ship is the Vihan, an autopsy ship with a crew of 4. There are notes like that throughout this book, and I can highly recommend to not ignore those. Please do not. The timeline is kind of confusing at times, and that's your only kind of marker as far as where you're at and how far into the future, past, or whatever it may be you are moving. So he obviously looks out the windshield of the spaceship which is the Vihan, and he says, "Why isn't it moving?" And then we get a beautiful title splash page, which I always love when books do this because it feels that much more cinematic and like a movie. But We Only Find Them When They're Dead. Book 1, The Seeker. So we then open up at 2367. So the panel before was 2323. This is 2367. The ship is the Vihan 2, and we pick up with that little boy who is now much older, it being 2367, and that little boy is George's Malik. He is the captain of the Vihan 2, and he has a crew of 4 as well. He has Ella Hauer, the coroner, Alice Worth, the quartermaster, and Jason Hauer, the engineer. Make note, Jason and Ella are brother and sister, and Jason and George's also have a connection as well, which I won't go deep into. And George's and Alice have a connection as well. So this is a ship full of relationships, connections, friendships, etc., etc. No one here is a stranger to the other. So we can continue in, and we eventually have the, once again, all's well's 8 bells saying, which is reminiscent to, in a lot of ways, a start of a convoy when going out on a mining mission or an autopsy mission, and that is for ships to race to a part of a dead god's body in order to mine it for minerals and resources for the advancement of society in a lot of ways. So here we are, our first appearance of a dead god, and a example of the incredible symbiotic feeling of the mysterious and intricate storytelling by Al Ewing and the very vibrant and majestic art and colors by Simone DeMeo, or Simon DeMeo. Not sure how to pronounce that. Not the brightest here. But we do learn a little bit about this crew. Like I said, as far as their relationships between the two, kind of how mining a god works, and how it's kind of shared amongst other ships, and the sectors that they have to call out and call dibs for, essentially, and how if you do not call out a sector and you try to steal a sector, or if you mine a god and try to steal said minerals instead of bringing it back to the society that you're a part of, you have in a lot of ways, a police officer that will essentially try to bring you in, kill you, whatever they deem fit. And that is kind of the, I guess, negative of this, is you only get paid for what you bring in. But here's an example of how the timeline kind of fluctuates a lot. So here's another panel. We have the year was 2337. So this is now in the past, from the past, or the last couple panels. So you do have a very sometimes confusing timeline that does go back and forth a lot. So this is not one that you can read with your, eyes half open and your brain not functioning. This is definitely one where you want to keep track of these dates. I made the mistake of, when I first kind of dove into this story, I didn't make note of the first couple dates, and I had to reread the first half. So please do yourself a favor, make note of that. Here's another example of the magnificent art. Each aspect of this book, or each chapter, if you will, really has a different color palette, and it almost puts you in a completely different mindset, a different world. And I think that's so fitting to the story, because each one of the chapters also has a completely different story. You have the first story, which is almost a space adventure. You have the second story, which is almost a political thriller in a lot of ways. And then you have the third story, which is almost a religious, war-filled storyline. And it just goes back and forth between different genres and different timelines. So it is definitely not for the faint of heart. You do have to have some very good reading comprehension and understand the characters and what's being said and what's taking place, because it is very easy to get confused and kind of lost into. I will touch on the storyline of the first chapter, and that is pretty much the ship of the Vihan 2, which, like I said, is the ship that Captain George's Malik captains, and that is an autopsy ship, or a mining ship, that really only sees gods when they show up and find a dead corpse of a god, and they mine said dead corpse and bring that back to never see that dead god ever again. And they do it routinely. Well, one day George's Malik decides that he wants to see a god alive. He doesn't only want to find them when they're dead. So he goes to the deepest, darkest, uncharted reaches of space against the well-being, or his possible well-being, because a lot of people deem it as a suicide mission, but he decides to do it anyway, and what he finds on the other side, you will have to read to find out, but it is a very thought-provoking and highbrow story. So if you really want one that, when you flip to that final page and close the book, leaves you just thinking and kind of stirring in your own mind, this is the book for you. Because I'm still thinking about this book and wondering what aspects I liked and disliked. I don't think it's a perfect book by any means, a perfect story, but it is definitely thought-provoking. There's a lot of themes explored here, a lot of mindsets, ideologies, aspects of life that are really delved deep into and kind of explored through the mind and eyes of Al Ewing, which is just great. I mean, I love thought-provoking stuff. It's one of the many reasons why I love Berserk, but this is just Al Ewing having a lot of fun, but also simultaneously trying to get people to just kind of think and feel. And that's really what we want from a book when it pertains to a story. You do have a lot of action throughout as well, especially during the political thriller storyline. A lot of interesting and advanced technology when it comes to the ships and the weaponry. There's a whole world that is built before your very eyes when it pertains to these ships, the technology, the belief system, the society, how they use gods and function with the dead gods, and what they get from the dead gods. And I think if you absolutely hate this story, you at least have to give Al Ewing all the credit in the world for that caliber of world building, especially in a book this thin that isn't the size of an omnibus, that isn't 1,000+ pages, and he just builds this world before your very eyes as so detailed and so intricate that you can't even wrap your head around it. And that's probably one of the drawbacks of the book for me personally, and maybe some of you that have my similar of taste of comic books, is I almost kind of felt not intelligent enough to read this. There's just so many moving parts and so many characters and so many revisited characters and revisited concepts, and it's just a lot of information that you do have to kind of hold on to, because they do come up again. And that's another recommendation that I'll give to those of you that will read this, is every detail you do have to kind of remember. And while I finished the book and I kind of remembered a lot of those details afterwards, while I'm reading, it's kind of hard, and I found myself flipping back and forth to remember who this character was and the relationship between another character and things like that, because there are a lot of characters throughout this that have a connection to one or more characters, and you do have to kind of remember that because it does come up quite a bit. So but we will wrap up there as far as the internals of the book, just because I really, really do not want to show the last half of the book, just because that is quite literally the end. I'll turn this light a little bit here. So we'll get to the extras. We do have additional artwork by Simone DeMio. A lot of these beautiful covers here. I want to say these are covers to the trade paperbacks, but they could be the covers to the issues as well. Those of you that read this in singles, let me know. But absolutely beautiful, breathtaking art. Cannot recommend the art enough. Make note of how much the palette changes during these colors, or these covers, when it pertains to the colors, because that happens constantly just to change the tone of whatever chapter and story you are reading. And then here's the final cover here, which is very touching once you finish the book. But that does wrap up the story. There is one thing that I do want to make note of in the back of the book, which maybe you might want to check out while reading, and that is this right here. This helped me a lot. This is the series timeline, so it literally breaks down the timeline and when something is taking place, and gives cliff notes of what was taking place between each of the storylines that you're reading about. So here is the previous timeline before book 1, and then here's everything that happened between book 1 and book 2. So you have book 1 taking place in 2367 and book 2 taking place in 2414, and all of these events that took place between book 1 and book 2. And then where book 2 took place in 2414, book 3 took place in 2452, with all of these events taking place in between. So this is a great addition to the book. I highly recommend maybe keeping this bookmarked while you read, because it helped me a lot while reading and after reading. So just make note of that. I hope you guys at least watched enough of this to make note that this is in the back of the book. But that does wrap up all We Only Find Them When They're Dead. I almost said What's Killing the Children, but that does wrap up the book, so let's head back to the table. And welcome back, nerds and nerdettes. So as I kind of touched on during the overhead shots, this is a very high concept when it comes to the plot and the storytelling aspects of this particular story. It's very reminiscent to Al Ewing's work on Immortal Hulk, where there are a lot of thought-provoking instances, plot points, and storylines that are taking place. And I think Al Ewing definitely does that on purpose, because he does want you to be kind of brainstorming while you're actually reading the story itself. This is definitely a little bit more highbrow and confusing than Immortal Hulk, mainly because of the inclusion of the timeline that Al Ewing explores and all of the characters that appear during these multiple timelines. Some of them taking place far into the future, a lot of flashbacks that take place more recently in the past, and then you have a present day, and you have characters that fill each of those timelines with different names, different roles, different ideologies and beliefs. So you have a lot of fleshed out characters, despite this being a somewhat smaller story. And it is a little confusing to kind of remember what timeline you are in and who these characters are and who they're related to, who they're romantically connected with, whatever it may be. It is a lot. That's really the main reason that I probably wouldn't recommend this to a new comic book reader, just because it is a lot of context, a lot of content, and it can be a little difficult to wrap your head around, especially for if you have a IQ level similar to mine, because I definitely struggled with that. But he does include a timeline chart at the end of the book. I do want to make sure everybody is aware of that timeline chart, because it does help drastically when reading. So I do recommend maybe bookmarking that particular chart and reading and kind of flipping back and forth during your reading experience. Now, when it does come to the art by Simone de Mayo, I would probably say this is a very like AI feeling art style. It does kind of have that feeling when reading that it almost feels unnatural in a way, and I say that with complete high regard, because it is extremely fitting when it comes to the story and the setting and the characters in this world that you are kind of a part of while reading. And then the color palette and the art style almost go side by side, hand in hand, and it works beautifully together. I think the character designs, the ship designs, the god designs, everything about this world, its space, its further reaches of space, the technology, I mean, it is just so thought out and beautiful and vibrant. And honestly, the color palette along with the art as well is extremely symbiotic and work beautifully together also. So really some amazing stuff as far as artistic ability when it comes to the art and the paneling, the action sequences and stuff like that, and the writing portion of the book as well. Just really artistic and thought out. My couple drawbacks, like I said, is that there's a lot going on, a lot of characters, a lot of timelines, so that is fairly difficult. So that is one of the possible negatives that somebody could see within the story. And when it does come to the art, while it is beautiful, 90% of this book, there is certain panels where it's almost being hindered by too much momentum, where a spaceship is flying or a character is being shot and spinning or in anti-gravity, so they're being hit and moving their body, and you almost kind of get discombobulated and don't really know exactly what's taking place until you stare at the panel and really analyze what happened before to kind of piece together what's taking place in that panel. So it doesn't come without some issues, but it is still a very interesting story. If you do like Grant Morrison, for example, this is probably going to be within your wheelhouse because it is very much out there. That's the best way I would describe it. But the rating that I am going to give We Only Find Them When They're Dead is going to be a 7.8 out of 10. I think this is one of those stories where you're either going to really love it or you're going to really hate it. There's going to be a few people that maybe fall in between, but I think all in all, it's going to be one or the other. And if you do love it, it's probably going to be the best story ever. But I would love to hear from you guys, like always. But that does wrap up today's review. Thank you so much for watching. I truly appreciate each and every one of you guys. I am very much looking forward to hearing from all of you when it comes to this particular story and whoever did read it, because I heard a lot about this when it was coming out in singles, at least during the beginning half of when it was coming out in singles, but then it kind of just dropped off the radar and I never heard anybody say anything about it again. I do know Omnidog really enjoyed his reading experience with it. And I'm sure he'll make a video if he hasn't already, so look forward to that. But I would love to hear from our community and the members that have read this and enjoyed this, or maybe didn't enjoy this, because I'm very curious what the pulse on this particular title actually is. But if you are not a part of the community, please hit that subscribe button to join the community. It's an amazing place that we all are building together. Also, if you could do me a favor and hit that thumbs up icon, it really means a lot to us on the channel. And if you did enjoy today's video and you want to be notified when other content gets posted, then do yourself a favor and hit that bell icon. That way you can get notified anytime this channel posts content. But thank you for watching once again. And of course, as always, stay nerdy.